The great chamber of Kepler Station stretched out like a metal cathedral in space. Hundreds of alien beings filled the curved seats that rose in circles around the central speaking area. The air hummed with different voices speaking in dozens of languages through tiny translation devices. Captain Jake Morrison sat in the small human section, watching the chaos unfold before him. Jake had been on many space stations in his 5 years as Earth's military representative. The Kepler station still amazed him. The massive orbital platform served as the heart of the Allied Species Coalition. 12 different alien races had built it together after the Great Peace Treaty was signed 200 years ago. Its gleaming walls showed holographic displays of distant star systems, trade routes and diplomatic messages flowing between worlds. But today, none of that beauty mattered. Today, the galaxy was asking for help. Ambassador Sci stood at the center of the chamber. The Viridian was tall and thin, with skin that looked like living crystal. Blue light pulsed under his transparent flesh, showing his emotional state to anyone who knew how to read the patterns. Now, those patterns showed fear, desperation, and exhaustion. Jake had learned to read Viridian emotions during his first year in space. It was part of his job to understand the alien species that Earth now called allies. The Viridians were peaceful people who had shared their advanced shield technology with the galaxy. They were scientists, artists, and philosophers. They had never hurt anyone. That was probably why they were dying. Honored delegates, Sci began, his voice carrying clearly through the translation system. I stand before you today not as an ambassador, but as a survivor. My people are facing complete extinction. In the past 6 months, we have lost 12 colonies to an enemy we barely understand. The chamber fell quiet. Even the constant whisper of translation devices seemed to fade as hundreds of alien beings focused on the Viridian's words. We call them the Devourers, Sci continued. His crystal skin flickered with darker shades of blue. They arrive without warning. Their ships are unlike anything we have seen before. They appear to be grown rather than built, made of living metal and organic tissue fused together. They consume everything. Our people, our cities, our worlds. Nothing remains but barren rock. Jake shifted in his seat. He had read the classified reports that Earth's intelligence services had gathered. The Devourers were bad news, but the other species in the galaxy had been fighting wars for thousands of years. Surely they could handle one hostile race. Activated a holographic projector? Images filled the air above the chamber, showing the destruction of Viridian colonies. Jake felt his stomach tighten as he watched cities being torn apart by massive biomechanical ships. Entire planets were stripped of life in days, their surfaces cracked and bleeding as some unknown process sucked out everything valuable. Our military forces have tried to stop them, Sci said, his voice growing quieter. Our shields, which have protected the galaxy for generations, mean nothing to their weapons. Our energy weapons barely scratch their holes. When we destroy one of their ships, 3 more take its place. They learn from every battle and adapt faster than we can develop new tactics. The hologram changed to show refugee fleets. Hundreds of Viridian ships, packed with survivors fleeing through space. With the Devourers close behind, Jake had seen similar images from Earth's own history during the Great Migrations and the corporate wars. But those had been humans fleeing from other humans. These were an entire species running from something that wanted to eat them around. The chamber, representatives from the 12 allied species, began to whisper among themselves. Jake recognized most of them from his briefings. The Altarian hegemony controlled the largest military force in the galaxy. Their gray-skinned warriors had been fighting space battles for 3,000 years. Centauri Collective had built defensive stations that had never been breached. The Drachner Empire had weapons that could crack planets, but as Jake listened to their whispered conversations through his translation device, he heard something that surprised him. Fear. These ancient, powerful civilizations were afraid. Devour fleet currently numbers over 200 vessels, Sci continued. Our best intelligence suggests they are gathering for a final assault on our homeworld. 8 billion Viridians live there. If they succeed, our species will be extinct within a standard week. General Dexmore of the Altarian hegemony stood up.
Great.
His gray skin was marked with ritual scars that showed his rank and battle experience. Ambassador Zexai, the hegemony sympathizes with your plight. However, engaging an unknown enemy of such power would be extremely risky. We suggest a defensive strategy. Fortify your remaining worlds and wait for opportunities to study these. Devourers. Jake frowned. Wait and study while billions died. That didn't sound like the military advice he would give. Speaker Yulana of the Centauri Collective rose next. Her blue-green skin rippled with the pattern that meant careful consideration. The collective agrees with General Dexmore, we propose, establishing a defensive perimeter around Viridian space. Our shield technology, combined with Altarian firepower, might contain the threat while we learn more about their capabilities. More representatives spoke, but Jake noticed a pattern. Every suggestion involved defending, studying, containing, or negotiating. None of them talked about attacking the Devourers directly. None of them mentioned total victory. This was not how humans thought about war. Jake had studied military history since he was a child. Earth had fought wars for thousands of years. Humans had learned one simple truth. When someone wants to kill you and take everything you own, you have two choices. Submit or fight back with everything you have. There was no middle ground with an enemy that wanted your complete destruction. The debate continued for hours. Representatives suggested evacuation plans, refugee processing centers, and long-term research projects. Some even proposed attempting communication with the Devourers, as if beings who consumed entire worlds might be interested in talking. Jake found himself getting angrier as he listened. These species had technologies that Earth could only dream of. Faster-than-light travel, energy weapons, artificial gravity, medical devices that could regrow limbs, but they thought like prey animals when faced with a predator. Finally, Zexai raised his hands for silence. The crystal being's skin had shifted to deep purple, a color that Jake had learned meant profound sadness mixed with rage. Honored delegates, Zexai said, his voice now carrying an edge that Jake had never heard from the peaceful Viridian before. I've listened to your suggestions. Defensive perimeters, research projects, evacuation plans. All reasonable ideas for dealing with a reasonable enemy. The ambassador paused, letting his words sink in. But the Devourers are not reasonable. They do not negotiate. They do not take prisoners. They do not seek territory or resources in any way we understand. They consume entire worlds for reasons we cannot comprehend. While you debate and study and plan, my people die. Every day, every hour, every minute. Zexai's skin flared bright white, a color that Jake's briefing said meant desperate determination. Implore any who will listen, he said, his voice breaking with emotion. Even the youngest species among us. We need help. Any help. Before our entire civilization is lost to the void. The chamber fell completely silent. Jake could hear the distant hum of the station's life support systems, the quiet whisper of air recyclers, and the subtle vibration of the massive structure rotating through space. But no one spoke. All eyes turned to the small human section. Jake felt the weight of hundreds of alien gazes focused on him, and the two other Earth representatives. We knew what they were thinking. Humans had only been part of the Galactic community. For 5 years, Earth's technology was primitive by Galactic standards. Their military was tiny compared to the great fleets of the older civilizations. What could the newest and weakest species possibly offer? Jake stood up slowly. The chamber remained silent as he walked down the steps toward the central speaking area. He could feel the mixture of curiosity, pity, and barely concealed amusement from the alien representatives. Some probably thought it was touching that the human wanted to help. Others might see it as foolish pride. Jake reached the center of the chamber and looked up at Zexai. The Viridian ambassador's crystal skin showed swirling patterns of hope mixed with desperation. Ambassador, Jake said, his voice carrying clearly through the translation system. I'll need to contact Earth. We'll see what we can do. A ripple of whispers went through the chamber. Jake heard fragments of conversation through his translator. The Altarians were discussing human military capabilities with obvious skepticism. The Centauri were debating whether Earth even had the resources to help with evacuation efforts. The Drachner seemed to think the human offer was some kind of primitive honor ritual. None of them took it seriously. Jake walked back to his seat, already composing the message he would send to Earth Command. He had a feeling that this conversation would change everything. The galaxy had asked for help, and Earth had never been good at saying no to people who needed saving, even if those people were 8-foot-tall crystal beings from another star system. 3 weeks had passed since Jake Morrison made his promise to Ambassador Zexai. The Galactic Council chambers on Kepler Station buzzed with nervous energy as representatives waited for the human response. Many had forgotten about the small species from the outer rim, but the Viridians remembered every word. Zexai paced near the viewing ports, his crystal skin showing deep purple streaks of anxiety. 2 more colonies had fallen while they waited. The Devourer fleet was moving closer to the Viridian homeworld with each passing day. Time was running out for his people. A soft chime echoed through the station's communication system. Human vessel. Approaching Docking Bay 7, the automated voice announced, requesting permission to board. Jake Morrison entered the council chambers an hour later, but he was not alone. Behind him walked 3 other humans that most of the aliens had never seen before. Jake looked the same as always, wearing his simple, blue uniform with Earth's flag on the shoulder, but something in his expression had changed. He looked more serious, more focused. The woman beside him commanded immediate attention despite her average height. Colonel Lisa Park had gray streaks in her dark hair and sharp green eyes that seemed to examine everything around her. She wore a black uniform covered with patches and symbols that the aliens did not recognize. Her movements were precise and controlled like a predator studying potential threats. Next to her stood Dr. Sam Rodriguez, a thin man with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. His uniform was different from the others, marked with medical and scientific symbols. He carried a large data pad and kept glancing around the chamber with obvious fascination. The third human was younger than the others. Lieutenant Commander Alex Turner had the build of an athlete and scars on his hands that spoke of practical experience. His uniform was similar to Jake's, but with additional equipment attached to his belt. He stood perfectly still, but his eyes constantly moved, tracking exits and potential defensive positions. General Dexmore of the Altarian hegemony noticed the humans first. His gray skin rippled with patterns of mild curiosity. Captain Morrison, we were beginning to wonder if Earth had decided against involvement. Situation has grown more desperate since your departure. Jake nodded to the general, then addressed the chamber. Earth has reviewed the data on the Devourers. We've sent an assessment team to evaluate the situation and determine how we can help. He gestured to his companions.
How?
Colonel Park commands our Special Operations Division. Dr. Rodriguez specializes in hostile alien biology. Lieutenant Commander Turner is our tactical analyst. Ambassador Zexai moved forward, his crystal skin flickering with desperate hope. Any assistance would be welcomed, Captain Morrison. We have lost 2 more worlds since you left. The Devourer fleet now numbers over 250 vessels. Our military estimates suggest we have perhaps 2 weeks before they reach our homeworld. Colonel Park stepped forward. Unlike the other humans, she did not wait for permission to speak. We'll need complete access to all your data on these Devourers. Battle recordings, survivor testimonies, wreckage analysis, everything you have. We also need to examine any captured technology or biological samples. Speaker Yulana of the Centauri Collective looked confused. Surely you do not intend to engage such a large enemy force with Earth's limited resources. Your entire space fleet numbers fewer than 30 vessels. Dr. Rodriguez adjusted his glasses and consulted his datapad. Actually, we're more interested in understanding what we're dealing with. From the preliminary data Captain Morrison provided, these Devourers show interesting biological and technological characteristics. They appear to be a hybrid species, part organic and part machine. The alien representatives exchanged glances. They had expected the humans to offer moral support or perhaps assist with evacuation efforts. The idea that Earth might have military solutions seemed unlikely, given their primitive technology. Colonel Park activated her own holographic display. The image showed Earth floating in space, a blue and white sphere that looked peaceful and welcoming. Before we discuss tactics, you need to understand something about humans. We come from what galactic classification systems call a Class 12 death world. Confused murmurs rippled through the chamber. Most of the aliens had never heard the term before. A death world, Dr. Rodriguez explained, is a planet so hostile that survival requires constant adaptation, aggression, and resilience. Most intelligent species evolve on garden worlds with stable climates, abundant resources, and minimal natural threats. Humans did not have that luxury. The hologram changed to show scenes from Earth's history: massive storms, volcanic eruptions, ice ages, and deadly predators flashed across the display. The alien representatives watched in shocked silence as they saw the environment that had shaped humanity. Earth has tried to kill us for millions of years, Lieutenant Commander Turner said quietly. Natural disasters, climate changes, diseases, predators that hunt in packs, and resources that must be fought for every day. We survive by becoming the most dangerous thing on our planet. General Vexmore's scarred face showed skepticism. This is interesting history, but how does it help against the Devourers? They possess advanced biomechanical technology in overwhelming numbers. Colonel Park smiled, and several aliens instinctively moved back from that expression. It was not a friendly smile, because the Devourers have never fought Deathworlders before. They've grown accustomed to fighting civilized species that value preservation of life above victory. They use fear as a weapon, target civilians first, and rely on their enemies' moral limitations. She changed the holographic display to show tactical analyses of Devourer attack patterns. Look at how they fight. They always start by threatening non-combatants. They destroy civilian centers to break enemy morale. They use biological weapons designed to cause suffering rather than quick death. These are intimidation tactics. Dr. Rodriguez nodded. From a biological standpoint, they're apex predators who have never faced serious resistance. Their biomechanical fusions suggest they consume other species to enhance their own capabilities. But predators have weaknesses. They become overconfident. When facing prey that doesn't fight back effectively, the chamber was completely silent now. Even the constant background hum of translation devices seemed quieter. Earth's proposal is simple, Colonel Park continued. We form a joint task force using human tactical doctrine with your superior technology. Human officers will train your crews in Deathworld combat techniques. Will modify your ships to fight total war rather than civilized conflict. Ambassador XIS crystal skin shifted to confused yellow patterns. What do you mean by total war? Lieutenant Commander Turner answered. Complete destruction of the enemy. No rules of engagement beyond victory. No mercy for those who show. None. No concern for infrastructure that can be rebuilt or resources that can be replaced. The only thing that matters is eliminating the threat permanently. The alien representatives began talking among themselves in urgent whispers. The concept seemed to disturb them greatly. Speaker Yulana stood up, her blue-green skin showing deep concern patterns. Such tactics seem extremely brutal. The Centauri have always believed that warfare should have limitations, rules to prevent unnecessary suffering. And that's why you're losing, Colonel Park said bluntly. The Devourers don't have rules. They consume entire worlds. While you debate ethics, they're planning to eat 8 billion Viridians. How is that civilized? General Vexmore's battle scars seemed to darken as he considered the human words. The Altarian military has protocols for extreme situations, but what you describe goes beyond anything in our experience. Dr. Rodriguez pulled up biological data on his display. Look at this analysis of devourer feeding patterns. They don't just kill for resources. They cause deliberate pain during consumption, apparently because fear and suffering improve the nutritional value of their prey. This isn't warfare as you understand it. This is farming. The hologram showed microscopic images of devourer bioweapons. In action, the alien representatives watched in horror as the weapons slowly dissolved living tissue while keeping victims conscious and aware. They're not trying to conquer you, Dr. Rodriguez continued. They're not seeking territory or tribute. You are literally food to them, intelligent, suffering food that tastes better when it's afraid. The chamber erupted in shocked conversations as species that had never considered such possibilities tried. To process this information, Jake Morrison stepped forward. Earth understands that our methods might seem harsh to civilized species, but we've learned something from living on a death world. Sometimes the only way to deal with monsters is to become the bigger monster. Ambassador Zexai moved closer to the human delegation. His crystal skin showed rapidly shifting patterns of hope, fear, and desperate determination. What would you need from us? Ships' crews willing to learn human tactics, and absolute authority over military operations? Colonel Park replied, no committee decisions, no debates during combat, no second-guessing orders that might seem brutal. War isn't a democracy. The debate that followed lasted for 6 hours. Species after species raised moral objections to human warfare methods. The Centauri worried about civilian casualties. The training facility on Titan Base looked nothing like the elegant academies where most galactic species taught their military officers. Colonel Park had chosen the asteroid mining station specifically because it was ugly, dangerous, and uncomfortable. The rough metal corridors, recycled air that always smelled of machinery, and constant background noise of mining equipment created an environment that most aliens found deeply unsettling. That was exactly what she wanted, Commander. Get Beth Taylor stood in the main training room, watching a group of Viridian soldiers attempt basic combat maneuvers. The crystalline beings moved with natural grace, their transparent skin glowing with soft blue light. They had been trying to master human infantry tactics for 3 weeks now, and the results were not encouraging. Squad leader Kextal, advance on the target position, Beth commanded through her translation device. The Viridian officer's skin flickered with uncertainty patterns. He looked at the mock enemy bunker, then at his squad, then back at Beth. Commander, Taylor, our analysis indicates that a direct assault would result in significant casualties. Perhaps we could attempt to negotiate with the occupants first? Beth closed her eyes and counted to 10. This was the same conversation she had been having for weeks with officers from every species. Extal. The enemy bunker contains devourers who want to eat your family. They do not negotiate, do not accept surrender. They want you dead. Now advance on that position. But surely there must be a way to minimize casualties, another Viridian protested. Our energy shields could Energy shields failed against devourer bioweapons on 12 colonies, Beth interrupted. Your people died because you worried more about fighting fairly than fighting effectively. Now move on that bunker, or I will find soldiers who actually want to save their species. The harsh words had an immediate effect. The Viridian skin patterns shifted to dark blue, showing embarrassment and determination. Squad leader Kextel raised his weapon and led his team in a clumsy but aggressive assault on the practice target. Across the facility, Chief Engineer Dan White was having similar frustrations with Altarian ship technicians. The gray-skinned aliens possessed incredible technical knowledge, but they seemed incapable of thinking outside their established procedures. No, Dan said for the 100th time that day. Remove the safety protocols from the targeting system. All of them. Technician Vorthak looked confused. Chief White, these protocols prevent accidental firing on civilian areas. They are standard throughout the galaxy. And that's why you keep losing to the Devourers, Don replied. They don't care about civilian areas. They use civilian areas as shields. Your ships hesitate to fire because they might hit non-combatants. Meanwhile, the Devourers are eating those same non-combatants. He pulled up a schematic of an Altarian cruiser on the holographic display. Look at this beautiful ship. Advanced energy weapons, sophisticated sensors, armor that can withstand anything in the galaxy. But it's programmed to fight by rules that your enemies ignore. Strip out every safety system that puts enemy lives above mission completion. The Altarian technicians worked in uncomfortable silence. Their entire culture was built around precise procedures and careful protocols. The idea of removing safety systems violated everything they had been taught in the medical bay. Dr. Sam Rodriguez was conducting what he politely called educational seminars with alien medical officers. The reality was much more disturbing. He was showing them recordings of human warfare throughout Earth's history. focusing on the medical aspects of combat in total war situations. Dr. Yelshara of the Centauri. Medical corps watched footage from Earth's Second World War with growing horror. The blue-green patterns on her skin showed revulsion and fear. Dr. Rodriguez. Surely these images are from your planet's primitive past. Modern human medicine must be more advanced. This is from less than a century ago, Sam replied calmly. And yes, our medicine is much more advanced now. The principles remain the same. In total war, you treat soldiers to fight again, not to live comfortable lives. You prioritize combatants over civilians when resources are limited. You accept that some people will die so that others can win. He changed the display to show field surgical techniques used by human military medics. Your species have amazing medical technology. You can regrow limbs and cure diseases that would kill humans in days, but you've never learned to practice medicine in hell. The Centauri doctor's skin shifted to deeper blue patterns. What do you mean? Combat medicine? When the enemy is using biological weapons specifically designed to cause maximum suffering. Surgery when the operating room is under bombardment, making decisions about who lives and who dies when you only have supplies to save half your patients. Sam's voice remained steady, but his eyes showed the weight of experience. The Devourers don't want quick, clean kills. They want their food to suffer. Your medical corps needs to understand what they're really dealing with. The most challenging training sessions took place in the Psychological Preparation Center. Major Pete Collins, a veteran of Earth's Special Operations Forces, conducted what he called reality education for alien officers who would command mixed human-alien crews. Today's session included representatives from 6 different species, all trying to understand human military thinking. Major Collins had shown them tactical scenarios that made most of them physically ill. Captain Beltar of the Centauri fleet raised one of his 4 arms. Major Collins, I must protest. The scenario you just presented requires sacrificing an entire colony to eliminate a Devourer staging area. Surely there must be alternatives that preserve more lives. Pete looked at the blue-green alien with tired patience. Captain, the colony has 40,000 civilians. The Devourer staging area will be used to launch attacks on 3 systems, with a combined population of 2 billion. Simple mathematics. But those 40,000 are real people with families and dreams, protested Commander Cythera of the Drachner fleet. How can you simply write them off? Because if we don't, 2 billion people with families and dreams will be eaten alive, Pete replied. This is what command decisions look like in total war. Every choice is terrible. Every option costs lives. You choose the option that saves the most people, and then you live with the nightmares. He activated another scenario, new situation. You can save a transport full of civilian refugees, or you can destroy a Devourer research facility that's developing new bioweapons. You cannot do both. Your choice will determine the course of the war. What do? The alien officers argued. For an hour, trying to find solutions that would accomplish both objectives. Pete watched them with the expression of someone who had faced such choices many times before. Finally, Lieutenant Zorish of the Altarian Marines spoke up. We save the research facility. Refugees die, but future generations live. The other aliens stared at him in shock. His gray skin showed patterns of deep sadness, but also resolved determination. Correct, Pete said quietly. Welcome to thinking like a Deathworlder, Lieutenant. It gets easier with practice, but it never stops hurting.
Dies.
The weeks passed. 3 distinct groups emerged from the training programs. The largest group consisted of alien officers who simply could not adapt to human warfare concepts. They were reassigned to support roles like logistics and communications, where their civilized approach to problem-solving was actually helpful. The second group included aliens who understood human tactics intellectually, but could never fully embrace them emotionally. These officers would serve as liaisons between human commanders and alien crews, translating brutal necessities into terms their people could accept. The smallest group was the most important. These were aliens who not only understood human warfare, but began to think like humans when faced with existential threats. They were the ones who would command ships in the coming battle. Commander Doc Kextall had become one of these transformed officers. The Viridian's crystal skin now showed patterns that his own people found disturbing. Sharp, angular designs that suggested predatory thinking rather than the flowing curves of traditional Viridian emotion. Commander Taylor, he said after completing, a particularly brutal training scenario. I believe I understand now. Your species fights like the universe is trying to kill you, because it is. Every day, in every way, you must choose between survival and principles. Survival always wins. Beth nodded approvingly. And that's why humans are still here, after millions of years on a death world. We choose to live no matter what it costs. The joint fleet began taking shape in the outer system. 12 human vessels, small but packed with weapons that prioritize damage over crew safety. 30 alien ships modified according to human specifications with safety protocols removed and targeting systems recalibrated for maximum destruction. Support vessels carrying supplies designed for extended, brutal warfare. The fleet's flagship was the UES Liberty, a human battlecruiser commanded by Admiral Kate Morgan. She was a veteran of Earth's corporate wars, where entire solar systems had fought over mining rights and trade routes. Kate had learned warfare in an environment where mercy was weakness and hesitation meant death. As she reviewed the final fleet composition, Jake Morrison joined her on the bridge. The joint fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Viridian system to find a scene that made even the human veterans pause in shock. 12 worlds that had once supported billions of lives now hung in space like broken teeth, their surfaces cracked and bleeding. The Devourer fleet surrounded the Viridian homeworld like a cancer. Over 200 biomechanical ships pulsing with organic light. Admiral Kate Morgan stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, studying the tactical displays with cold, professional interest. The enemy formation was exactly what human intelligence had predicted. The Devourers had positioned themselves to maximize fear and psychological impact rather than military efficiency. They're showing off, she said to Jake Morrison, who had joined the command crew for the battle. Look at that formation. They want the people on the planet to see them, to know they're about to die. They're feeding on terror before they even start the physical consumption. Jake watched the biomechanical ships moving in slow, predatory circles around the blue-green world below. How many people are down there? 8 billion Viridians in underground shelters, Kate replied. They've been hiding for 3 weeks, listening to their planet's surface, being prepared for harvest. She turned to her communications officer, Lieutenant Hayes. Signal all squadron leaders. We begin Phase 1 immediately. The first phase of the human battle plan was something the aliens had argued against for hours during the planning sessions. Instead of announcing their presence with traditional challenges or attempting to negotiate, small, human-led squadrons began systematic harassment attacks on the outer edge of the Devourer formation. Lieutenant Commander Rachel Stone commanded. One such mission aboard the modified Altarian cruiser Starshard. Her crew consisted of 3 humans and 12 Altarians who had been among the most successful in adapting to human tactics. The mixed crew had trained together for 2 months, learning to think and fight as a single unit. Target the supply. Vessels first, Rachel ordered as her ship approached a cluster of smaller Devourer bioships. Remember, we're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to make them angry and stupid. The Altarian weapons officer, Lieutenant Zorish, had once been horrified by such tactics. Now his gray skin showed patterns of grim satisfaction as he targeted the enemy ships with surgical precision. Human doctrine suggests attacking their logistics network will force them to respond emotionally rather than tactically. Exactly, Rachel confirmed. Fire all weapons. The Starshard's modified weapon systems tore through 3 Devourer supply ships before the enemy could respond. The biomechanical vessels screamed across all frequencies as they died, their organic components releasing chemicals that triggered panic responses in their nearby fleetmates. Similar attacks erupted throughout the outer system as human-led. Squadrons struck like angry hornets. They targeted communication nodes, supply lines, and isolated vessels rather than engaging in honorable ship-to-ship combat. Each attack followed human doctrine: maximum damage with minimum risk, then immediate retreat before the enemy could organize a response. The Devourers reacted exactly as Admiral Morgan had predicted. Instead of maintaining their formation and continuing their planet harvesting operations, they began pursuing the raiders with overwhelming force. Dozens of bioships left their positions to hunt down the small human squadrons, breaking the careful pattern they had maintained for weeks. Commander Tim Harper found himself leading one of the most dangerous missions when his squadron was cornered near the system's fourth planet. His ship, the modified Viridian destroyer Harmony's Edge, faced 5 Devourer bioships that had cut off his escape route. The alien crew members looked to Harper with trust that he found both touching and terrifying. These beings had abandoned everything they believed about civilized warfare because they trusted human tactical judgment. "All hands, prepare for Tactic 7. Harper announced over the ship's communication system. The Viridian crew members had learned what Tactic 7 meant during their training. Several of them showed the crystal skin patterns that indicated fear, but none of them objected. They had seen the recordings of their consumed colonies. They knew what happened to civilized species that fought by civilized rules. Harper waited until the Devourer ships closed to optimal range, then activated the ship's ramming speed while simultaneously preparing to detonate the reactor. The alien crew worked with desperate efficiency, evacuating non-essential areas and preparing for the sacrifice that would save countless others. The Harmony's Edge struck the largest Devourer vessel at full speed. The impact tore through the biomechanical hull like a spear through flesh, and Harper detonated the ship's reactor core at the moment of deepest penetration. The explosion triggered a chain reaction in the bioship's interconnected nervous systems, causing 3 additional vessels to convulse and die. Harper and his crew died in the explosion, but they took out 15 times their ship's mass and enemy forces. More importantly, they sent a message that the Devourers had never received before. Their prey was willing to die rather than be consumed. Throughout the outer system, the harassment attacks continued. The Devourers began to adapt their tactics, just as human intelligence had predicted. But adaptation requires time. Admiral Morgan had no intention of giving them that luxury. Commander Lisa Young demonstrated the next phase of human tactical thinking during the Battle of the Asteroid Field. Her squadron had retreated to a mining area when pursued by a dozen Devourer ships. Instead of attempting to escape or fight a conventional battle, Yang implemented a plan that left her alien crew members speechless with admiration. "All mining stations in the belt," this is Commander Yang, "activate emergency protocols and evacuate immediately, returning your equipment into weapons." Yang's ships used industrial mining charges and electromagnetic pulse generators to turn the entire asteroid field into a massive weapon system. When the Devourer bioships entered the field, they found themselves flying through a carefully prepared killing zone. The first wave of explosions shredded the organic hulls of 3 enemy vessels. But the Devourers began adapting, hardening their biomechanical armor to resist the debris impacts. Yang watched their adaptation with satisfaction. "Now switch to electromagnetic pulse weapons," she ordered. The alien crew members had questioned this tactic during training. Why reveal a second weapon system when the first was still effective? But they trusted human strategic thinking, and now they understood why. The Devourers had adapted their hulls to resist physical damage, but the adaptation made them more vulnerable to electromagnetic interference. Yang's pulse weapons disrupted the biomechanical nervous systems of the enemy ships, causing them to lose coordination and crash into the asteroids they were trying to navigate around. By the end of the first week of fighting, the Devourer fleet had lost 37 ships to constant harassment, while the human-led force had sacrificed only 8 vessels. The numbers were encouraging, but more importantly, the psychological impact was devastating. The Devourers had never faced an enemy that fought without regard for traditional rules of engagement. Every time they adapted to one human tactic, the raiders switched to something completely different. The biomechanical ships began showing signs of stress and confusion as their organic components struggled to process the constant surprises. Captain Veltar of the Centauri fleet led one of the most successful raids when he attacked a Devourer research facility hidden in the shadow of a dead The blue-green alien had been one of the most resistant to human tactics during training. But weeks of watching his civilized allies die had changed his perspective. Remember, Veltar told his mixed crew of Centauri and humans, "We are not here to capture intelligence or study enemy technology. We are here to ensure this facility can never be used again." The research station contained dozens of Devourer scientists working on new bioweapons designed to cause maximum suffering during consumption. Traditional galactic warfare would have called for capturing the facility and attempting to reverse engineer the enemy technology. Human warfare had simpler priorities. Veltar's ships bombarded the facility with incendiary weapons that burned hot enough to destroy organic matter at the molecular level. When the Devourers attempted to evacuate their research, human fighters intercepted the escape pods and eliminated them with ruthless efficiency. No survivors, no technology transfer, no second chances, Veltar reported to Admiral Morgan. Skin patterns showed satisfaction mixed with horror at what he had become. The facility has been completely sterilized. As the harassment phase continued, alien crew members throughout the fleet began to understand what humans meant by total war. Lieutenant Kextal of the Viridians sent a personal message to his family on the planet. "Below, we have learned to fight like Deathworlders now. The monsters will not have you." But the Devourers were learning too. Their biomechanical adaptation abilities allowed them to evolve new tactics with frightening speed. Admiral Morgan watched the enemy fleet reorganizing and knew that the harassment phase was nearly over. "Signal all squadrons to return to the main fleet," she ordered. Phase 2 begins in 6 hours. The final battle began with intelligence that made Admiral Kate Morgan smile with the cold satisfaction of a predator spotting weakness. The Devourers were preparing to consume the Viridian homeworld's population within the next 12 hours. Their biomechanical ships had positioned themselves in a feeding formation around the planet, ready to begin the process that would turn 8 billion lives into organic fuel. Traditional galactic warfare would have called for defensive positions around the planet, but Admiral Morgan implemented the human doctrine of offensive defense. If the enemy wanted to eat her friends, they would have to go through her first. Captain Nick Torres led the assault aboard the U.S. Vengeance, a heavy cruiser modified with weapons that most galactic species considered war crimes. His target was not the enemy fleet's strongest ships, but their most vulnerable ones. "All squadrons target the nursery ships first," Admiral Morgan commanded from the Liberty's bridge. "Those vessels contain Devourer young and genetic material. Everyone we destroy prevents future worlds from being consumed." The alien crew members throughout the fleet hesitated. The nursery ships were clearly marked with bioluminescent patterns that identified them as non-combatant vessels. Attacking them violated every principle of civilized warfare that these species had followed for thousands of years. Commander Kextal of the Viridians was the first to respond. His crystal skin showed patterns that his own people would find disturbing. Sharp, angular designs that suggested predatory thinking. "Human doctrine is correct. These are not children. They are weapons being grown to consume more worlds." The modified weapons of the Joint Fleet opened fire on targets that had never been attacked in galactic history. The nursery ships died with screams that could be heard across all frequencies. Their organic hulls bleeding chemicals that triggered panic responses throughout the Devourer fleet. The enemy reaction was immediate and exactly what Admiral Morgan had hoped for. Devourers abandoned their careful feeding formation around the planet to protect their offspring, breaking the defensive shell that had made them nearly invulnerable. "Phase 3. Execute now," Morgan commanded. What followed was a battle that would be studied and whispered about for generations. Commander Ellen Price led a boarding party that used psychological warfare techniques learned from humanity's darkest conflicts. Her teams broadcast recordings of human history's worst atrocities directly into the biomechanical ships, causing the living vessels to experience what humans called existential horror. The Devourer ships began to malfunction as their organic components tried to process concepts they had never encountered. Images of human warfare, genocide, and systematic destruction overwhelmed biomechanical minds that had known only the simple pleasure of consumption. "It's working," Dr. Sam Rodriguez reported from his monitoring station aboard the Liberty. Their bioneural networks are going into shock. They can't understand a species that documents its own capacity for evil. But the space battle was only part of Admiral Morgan's plan. On the surface of the Viridian homeworld, Colonel Lisa Park implemented tactics that would have been impossible for any civilized species to consider. Instead of defending the cities where 8 billion Viridians huddled in underground shelters, she ordered the complete evacuation of the planet's surface. Every civilian was moved to deep bunkers, while human engineering teams turned the entire world into a trap. When the first wave of Devourer landing forces arrived, they found a planet that seemed ripe for harvesting. Cities stood empty but intact, with no signs of military resistance. The biomechanical creatures began their feeding process, expecting to find billions of terrified prey hiding in buildings and tunnels. Instead, they found hell. Colonel Park had turned every structure into a weapon. Chemical agents designed to dissolve organic tissue filled the air. Biological weapons developed from Earth's most dangerous viruses infected the Devourer ground forces. Buildings exploded when touched, releasing clouds of acid that ate through biomechanical armor. The planet's surface became a killing field that stretched from pole to pole. Devourer landing craft crashed into lakes that had been turned into pools of industrial solvent. Ground forces found themselves breathing atmosphere that was toxic to their specific biology, thanks to human chemical analysis of captured specimens. How is this possible? Transmitted one dying Devourer commander to the fleet above. No species fights like this. No species turns their own world into poison. Colonel Park responded on all frequencies, her voice carrying the cold fury of a Deathworlder protecting her adopted family. You wanted to eat our friends? Welcome to Earth tactics, you monsters. In space, the battle reached its climax when Admiral Morgan made a decision that horrified and awed the alien observers in equal measure. The Devourer mothership, a biomechanical horror the size of a small moon, was too powerful for conventional weapons to destroy. Traditional tactics would have called for siege warfare, slowly wearing down the enemy's defenses while minimizing friendly casualties. Human tactics were more direct. All hands prepare for ramming speed, Admiral Morgan announced over the Liberty's communication system. We're going to breach that mothership's hull and deploy Marines directly into its interior. The alien crew members looked at their human officers with expressions of shock and admiration. They were volunteering to fly into the belly of a living nightmare, Major. Chris Williams prepared his boarding party for what could only be described as an assault on hell itself. The interior of a Devourer mothership was a biological nightmare designed to process organic matter into weapons. Miles of digestive passages, nerve clusters the size of buildings, and immune systems that treated any foreign presence as food. Remember your training, Williams told his mixed force of human Marines and alien volunteers. We're not here to capture territory or study enemy technology. We're here to kill this thing so completely that it can never regenerate. The Liberty struck the mothership's hull at full ramming speed, tearing through biomechanical armor like a spear through flesh. Williams and his team deployed directly into what amounted to a living city designed to digest them. The boarding action that followed was unlike anything in galactic military history. Human soldiers used flamethrowers to burn through nerve clusters, while alien specialists planted nuclear charges in what appeared to be the creature's reproductive organs. The mothership fought back like a living being, trying to digest the invaders while simultaneously attempting to expel them. This thing is trying to eat us from the inside, reported Sergeant Kelly Baker over the radio. It's actually trying to dissolve our armor with stomach acid? Then we dissolve it first, Williams responded, detonating charges that sent waves of fire through the creature's nervous system. The battle inside the mothership lasted for 6 hours. Williams's team fought their way through what could only be described as a biological maze designed by a nightmare. Digestive chambers tried to dissolve them. Immune systems attacked them like white blood cells fighting infection. And the ship itself seemed to scream in frequencies that human ears could barely detect. The final confrontation occurred in the mothership's control center, a pulsing mass of neural tissue that served as the creature's brain. The devourer hive mind intelligence attempted to communicate with Williams, trying to understand what manner of beings could fight so brutally for creatures not even of their own species. "Why do you protect them?" the entity asked, its voice echoing through biomechanical speakers. "They are not your kind. Their deaths would not diminish your species." Williams looked at the alien intelligence with the cold eyes of a human who had seen too much war. "Because they ask for help. That's what humans do." He detonated the final nuclear charge directly into the creature's brain center, ensuring that its genetic line could never regenerate. The mothership died with a scream that was heard across the entire star system. The battle ended not with negotiation or mercy, but with the complete extinction of the devourer species. Their technology was analyzed and destroyed, their biological material was incinerated, and their star charts were used to hunt down any remaining colonies in distant systems. 6 months later, Captain Jake Morrison attended a ceremony on Kepler Station where humanity was officially welcomed as a full member of the Galactic Council. But the mood was complex. The alien species were grateful for their survival, but deeply disturbed by what they had witnessed. Ambassador Zexai, his crystal skin showing patterns of gratitude mixed with unease, spoke for many when he addressed the human delegation. "Your people have saved us all, but they have also changed us. We can never again claim ignorance of what war truly means." The galaxy was safer now, but it had learned what Deathworlders were capable of when they chose to protect their friends. Human ships patrolled the borders of civilized space, their crews ready to do whatever was necessary to maintain peace. Admiral Kate Morgan, now commanding the newly formed Galactic Defense Force, addressed the Council with words that would be remembered for generations. "You asked for our help. We gave it. The next time something threatens the civilized galaxy, remember that civilized solutions don't work against uncivilized enemies, but Deathworlders do."